Thank you so much for having us here this morning at DigiMarcon. So I have to say, I'm really happy to be here for two reasons. And the first one is that I get a chance to come here and talk to you about data, and hopefully it'll be very interactive, so ask lots and lots of questions, because we can learn from you as well. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is because it's LA, and it's cool. It is 112 degrees in Phoenix, Arizona right now, which is where I came from. So we have blackouts, which you had last night, 112 degrees, and it's just the beginning of summer. You can just imagine when it hits August and September, it gets up to 125, and we've had that before. So any conferences, Aaron and team, invite us if it's going to be LA. We will be here. Awesome. See, I'm easy. So this morning, we're going to talk about data. And I'm actually going to bring up two of my favorite people, Diana Stankovic from Cisco, and come on up. Thank you. And June Grabowski from Google. Nice.
Hi, everyone.
And
Good
I
morning.
will ask them to introduce themselves so you get to meet these wonderful ladies as well. So Deanna, did you want to go first to do a quick intro?
Sure.
The team?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm only coming from the Bay Area. It's still over 100 degrees, so pretty nice. I don't know, anyone here from the Bay Area?
All right.
Yeah, very disappointing weather here for me, unlike for Laura. So my name is Diana. I work at Cisco. Laura and I work together, and I lead something that we call omnichannel marketing and demand. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more later about what that means and how that works. Thank you for having us here. June?
Hi, I'm June Grabowski. I do advertising partnerships within the tech B2B vertical at Google. I'm excited to be here, also escaping the abnormal heat in the Bay Area. I live in Berkeley, and we've been hanging outside in the 95-degree weather because it's about 120 inside of our house. So thank you for inviting us. We're happy to be here.
Nice, thank you. Now, when you say it's 100 degrees and it's hot,
Yeah, no, you
that's
wouldn't,
nothing,
you wouldn't
really.
understand. So
No, yeah,
that's fine.
that's okay.
Yeah.
You'll
It's a
catch up.
different book.
All right, so this morning we'll talk about bridging the gap with data. And I think, as marketers, sometimes we get together and we talk about how much data we have, how many tools we have, how many platforms we have. And we realize that at the end of the day, there is a customer on the other end that all they want is a good experience. So do we get too much into the data where we forget the real reason that we're here, right? And so today we'll talk about the data connection. We'll talk about how that lends itself to the overall customer experience. We'll talk about intent and how we lead with intent in the data that we have. And then Deanna will walk you through some really cool examples of how we bring all that to life at Cisco. At the end, we will have a Q&A panel. And so actually, if you can pass that little Google Home to me right there, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. This is what old age looks like. You forget your giveaway. So for the Q&A panel, because sometimes people are shy, we have this here as a little incentive. Ask all the hard questions to Deanna. She's promised to answer all of them. And if you need any more motivation, then we have this here for you. And there are more this evening as well. So before we get started, let's talk a little bit about the video you're going to see next. And we call that A Day in the Life. And when this video was created about 2 years ago with Deanna and team, it was mostly aspirational. We were thinking of what does that ideal experience look like when we're using data, not just to have data, but use data to get a really rich and robust experience for our customers. And so we can say now, 2 years later, that it's no longer aspirational. It is what the real world looks like for us at Cisco. So let's go ahead and meet Paul.
I know just who to call.
That's great, Paul. See you tomorrow.
Thank you. Does this resonate with you? Does this look like things that you're either doing today or trying to do today? Any of these experiences, these tactics, and so on and so forth. So it may be a reality for you today, like Laura was saying earlier. For us, this was aspirational 2 years ago. It is now what we do today, and this is what we call at Cisco omnichannel. It's basically connecting customer experience across all channels where the customer is. I will show you a little bit later what we aspire to do today. So what is the aspiration now that we can do stuff like this? But before we go into it, we're going to put some context into this conversation. Why are we doing all this, and why are we even trying to do things like this? It's pretty cool. I can tell you it's a good experience getting involved in these things, but what is the purpose? So at scale, technology and data have evolved traditional human conversations from small or even large number of people to millions. Depending on what your topic is, you can now speak to millions of people that you may or may not know, that you may understand, or may even understand that they're there. Also, marketeers today, we think, have access to about 200 or more data sources. So how come we don't get it right every time? Why is that? And ultimately, what is it that we're trying to do? At Cisco, Google, and I'm sure for you as well, we're all trying to do a basic thing that looks a little bit like this. Hundreds of years ago, good experience meant I'm walking in and you know who I am. You probably know what I need by now. Or you can even start anticipating my needs as well. That's all it is. 200 plus data sources, very simple experience as the goal. Also, expectation, this is probably the most important thing if you're in B2B or if you're at an agency and you have B2B clients. In B2B, there was a huge shift at about 2013. The years don't really matter specifically. In the past, if you're in B2B, you're buying Cisco, that means you're buying a very expensive network, for example, right? You were expected to do a lot of work. You as a buyer, I'm talking about now. You work for a company, you are paid to come to work, you are not spending your own money, so expectation is it should be hard, it should be tough, and you should do a lot of work, right? That completely changed with the emergence of business-to-consumer companies that started looking into experience first. It rolled on into B2B as well. So that shift on the right-hand side, now the brand, Cisco in this case, in our case, is expected to do all that work for you, for the buyer. You're not supposed to compare things, you're not supposed to pick up phones, and you're actually supposed to come and I'm supposed to answer all those questions for you. I'm supposed to say this is how Cisco compares to any of the competitors, this is what the benefit is of buying Cisco, and so on and so forth. I am doing the work for you. That in B2B is a very unusual concept, or at least it was, and one that we need to actually start delivering on. And why is that? Because 2020 is when the expectation is that the experience with your program takes over any other thing that you may offer. Price, product, it's a given. We call it table stakes at Cisco. But is it easy to buy Cisco today? Well, it's definitely easier than it was before. We're still not quite there. 71% of organizations cited customer experience as their competitive advantage. And what that means, and it's really important for us right now, is in B2B, it still is. If you get this right in business to business, I'm pretty sure in business to consumer, but I'm going to stick with what I know. But in business to business, if you are able to provide that beautiful, simple experience, doesn't matter how much data you use and how you get there, today, still, you can win over your competition purely based on that experience. So it's just an introduction for me. I'm going to ask June to tell us how do you guys do this at Google and what do you look at? And then I'm going to come back later and show you some of the Cisco examples for this.
Thank you. And one of the things that we think about is that if you're going to be assistive and you're actually going to provide that seamless consumer experience, is that you have to start with the consumer. So we say, if you know your consumer, you can show up and provide them with the most assisted experience possible, and you can do so in a fast and frictionless manner, then that consumer is yours. Easy, right? Probably not. So when we think about that consumer, we've done a lot of research around the consumer and who is that. And what we've found is that today's consumer is very different than our consumer was 5 years, 3 years, 1 year ago. And the reality is they're incredibly curious, they're demanding, and they're highly impatient. When we think about curiosity, we think about the amount of research and access to research that we have out there. You can pretty much research anything. Fun fact that I love to share is, can anybody in the room guess how many YouTube videos there are on purchasing a shower curtain? Any guesses? That's a lot of research on a shower curtain. A lot of people interested. Close, 300,000 videos around how to purchase a shower curtain. Something pretty mundane, something you probably don't need a lot of assistance in, but you're incredibly curious and the information is there, so you're going to access it. When we talk about demanding, us as consumers, we expect brands to know what we want and what their brand can provide us. Brands are constantly soliciting us, and we expect those brands to know exactly what we want at that time, and when they don't, we get frustrated. And when we talk about impatience, things should be super, super fast. Has anybody gone on their mobile device, tried to go to a website, and it doesn't load? You just leave. Why are you going to wait? You can go back, you can search for something else and go there. So these are trends that we're seeing across consumers right now. And what is interesting is that brands are keeping up. And when we think about brands that are keeping up and providing those seamless experiences, we're looking at the brands that provide those best experiences possible in consumers' everyday life. So you're probably wondering why I'm standing on a stage with Cisco and showing you images of Uber, Starbucks, and a fashion site. Well, that's because no matter what industry, what category you're in, these are brands that your consumers are using on a daily basis. And these brands have set the expectations for your consumers, and they are more curious, more impatient, and more demanding because of them. So what we like to say is that no matter the category, no matter the industry you're in, you're competing with the best possible experience a consumer has had. So if you show up, you provide them with that experience, you leverage the data that you have to provide the most assistive experience possible, you're going to resonate with them. How do you do this? So back to the earlier question, super easy, right? The things that we put the foundation on is actually showing up, being highly personal, and being fast. Deanna's actually going to walk through, and Lorianne are going to walk through how Cisco does this, the tools that they leverage, how they're able to apply them to consumers, and actually do that for their B2B buyers.
Awesome. Thanks, June. So how are we going to be relevant and fast and be customer first? And there is this quote here from David Ogilvy, and it's interesting. I'll ask you a question in a minute about that. But what he says is, if you're trying to persuade people to do something or buy something, it seems to me you should use their language and understand their behavior. Do you remember any idea when David Ogilvy said this? And he started Ogilvy years and years ago. General idea of what time frame this was? Close, yep. It was in the 50s going into the 60s. And isn't it fascinating that this is still so relevant today? It's still resonating. And it all goes back to Deanna's point about the basics, getting back to basics. Because if you do know what they want and you're using their language, it's much easier to connect with them. And so when we think about connecting with customers, especially through the lens of search, so for Cisco.com, we bring more than half of our traffic to organic search, to Cisco.com. And we realized that for the B2B shopper, they're using search an average of 12 times before they're going to a branded site. And so we can't expect that when they get up in the morning, they'll think about, gee, like what router do I need from Cisco? What's Cisco doing today? I'm going to go to the website and browse. That's not the expectation. These people are very task-based. Like June said, they're very impatient. They want stuff now. And so if they're searching on Google, guess where we need to be? We need to be there with the right content at the right time. And understanding their behavior gets us so much closer to meeting that need. And so we then take all of that data, and this whole concept of big data for search is critical because we then look at all the ways that they're searching. What are the keywords they're using? Is it around a particular problem or a need or an application? Is it looking for a product? And we take all of that data and we map it by moments. And Deanna will get into this moments that matter in just a moment. But we are trying to be as focused as possible and being as relevant as possible. And as you can notice over the past 5 or 6 years or so, the search engine results page is also changing. And so before it used to be a long list of just results, now we're seeing where it's broken up into these moments. And so you're like, okay, and I want to know moments. I want to go moments. I want to do moments, and I want to buy moments. And so these are extremely critical because they don't map back to the content people are looking for. So I want to know quick answers, position 0 within Google search, really important. I want to go moments. What are they looking for? Usually it's local relevance. What's near me? What's the restaurant near me? What's a mall near me? I want to do moments. Think about video, an incredible way that as marketers, we can use videos to really help customers answer questions. So how does it work? What is it? All kind of fits into that category. And then I want to buy moments. And you think of all the links and ads that we can use, again, to help customers as they're towards the bottom of that conversion funnel. And so if the search is changing and if the customers are changing, then we have to adapt as well. And so you'll start to see these are all the questions that customers are asking, and this is how we then approach what content we create. So what topics are trending? What questions are they asking? Where they're going when they're not coming to Cisco.com. Really important. Who else is showing up as a competitor when they're not coming to my site? So we look at that as well. We also look at what are the gaps in my content? Because if they're searching for a particular product or a certain application and they can't find the content, that tells me that I've missed that chance to interact with them and provide some element of value. And so we take all of this data, and you'll see a really quick case study. I'll build this out. We essentially take all those queries from Google Search Console. We look at all the impressions. We look at all the clicks. We then look at ways that people are searching based on the keyword query, and we start to then use big data to help us understand. You take unstructured data, you look for certain patterns, you create structure around that, and then you start to look for insights. And these insights then tell me, okay, they're looking for what is a router? What is big data? How does that work? How can we apply this for a certain industry? And then based on that, we create content. And so the content isn't just what Cisco wants to say. The content is very much informed by what the user is looking for. And so then you get content around what is, how to, usually ranks really well on that position 0 of the quick snippet. And that is a way for us to get really good share of voice on the shelf as they're searching. And so when we look at the entire process, you see it starts with a customer insight. It doesn't start with Cisco. We then understand how they're searching. We put it all into a data cube. We use BrightEdge. And then we look at the ideal landscape. What would customers really want to see when they come to Cisco.com? And the next question is, an interesting one, do we have it? Is there a content gap? And we literally sit down, we map out a site map of that we have the right content, or we have gaps, or we need to create something brand new, or get rid of content. And then based on that, we then create a content plan. How do we optimize existing content so it ranks higher on the shelf within the search results page? How do we merchandise pages that are doing really well, getting really good traffic, so that users that are already coming to those pages can then learn of other new products? So essentially, your site becomes this native advertising tool. And then how do we maximize? So when they're not coming to Cisco.com, where are they going? And so we literally look at all of the authority domains or all the other sites that they're going to. We call them watering holes. If they're going to TechTarget, then we need to be there as well. So should we buy advertising? Or should we have content syndication? Again, the goal is less about the website, it's more about the customer and how we can be there based on where they're at in that moment. And then lastly, don't forget to measure. Are we doing well? Are we measuring the right things? And do we have the right insights? And then basically it's a rinse and repeat to complete that process. So Deanna's going to take us through the last part, which is about content and how we're leveraging specific data tools at Cisco.
All right, so this is where the fun starts. So B2B process. This is not ours. This is Gartner. B2B process is considered to be a long, hard slog. This is very much what buying Cisco was back in the day. I'm not necessarily saying we cleaned it all up, but we work a lot to clean up this picture. It's not, when we say customer journey, we imagine boxes and arrows, and one box leads to another arrow perfectly and seamlessly. Well, this is what customer usually experiences when they want to buy something of a significant value in B2B. So how did we go about it? Laura mentioned moments that matter, and that's what we used. So we started seeing this journey, first of all, as a linear. But step number one was translate the journey from the customer into a customer view. I'm aware, I shop, I buy, I install, I use, I want more. That was the first. The second was go deeper. We said we had over 200, access to over 200 sources of data. Then we looked into all of them, and we created these moments that matter along that path. Those moments are also described from the customer point of view. What are my options? How does it best fit my needs? I'm considering buying Cisco, and so on and so forth. They look very pretty, but they're not made up. They're actually extracted from different research points that we had. Whether it was qualitative, we spoke to customers, or it was quantitative, we actually looked into our data. So this was our step two. And then we started looking and auditing content the way Laura described. Do we answer all these questions? Do you have a piece of content that answers each and every question that your customer has along the buying cycle? And I can tell you now that you're very likely not to. And I can also, predict that where those gaps are, they tend to be at the beginning rather than at the bottom. And why do you think that is? Why do we have more content for the bottom of the journey? Because it talks more about us. And usually companies spend and invest more money into the content that talks about their products, less about the content that talks about the customer care about. So think about that. They may not be true for all of you, but think about that when you think about the content that you have and that you produce. Okay, so now this pretty picture, what do you do with it, right? So what does that mean? So then we looked into the whole life cycle. This is what the life cycle looks like at Cisco and how it's represented. We mapped out all those moments across the whole life cycle, and then we went and looked into the data behind. This does require analytics. This is not what marketing can do by themselves. So what we did then, and I will show you, so I'm not online. This is actually a grab, right? This is just a video, but it's real. So what this is, same journey that you saw before. The stops on this, we call it a racetrack. The stops on this racetracks are moments. And these moving parts that you see here, differently color-coded, each and every one of these dots represents a real-life Cisco account customer. So we loaded our accounts for a particular category, it doesn't matter, but we loaded our accounts and pushed it through the machine to see what machine has learned and seen about this account. How do they go through this journey when you push them through the machine where every moment is defined through data, both qualitative and quantitative input that we showed you today. And guess what? They start getting all over the place. This whole boxes and arrows, and they go from one moment to another, from moment number 1 to moment number 2 to 3. That doesn't happen. But what does happen, if you start looking, scratching the surface and looking into your data, you start actually considering certain patterns. So what your analytics is able to do for you then is to say, this machine has learned and seen things. So no, it's not linear, but it's not random either. There are certain predictions that the machine can start making, saying they are most likely for this category to go from moment number 2 to moment number 7, and then they usually buy. So what does that mean to us marketeers? Laura said, apply your right content into the right stage of the journey. Guess what? What I showed you earlier is actually the machine showing you things as they are. So what happens if you start affecting that state? So now, not only are you mapping your content across the journey, now, because the machine is telling you that the prediction is that they're going to move from moment number 3 to moment number 7, guess what? You start giving them offers from number 7 at a different time in the journey, which you would never guess. I can guarantee you there are certain movements within a journey that you cannot guess. Human approach to it would never guess and would never give you the answer. So you start actually changing that experience for them because you have the machine that learned and tells you how to do it. The future of this, I showed you the video at the beginning, this is the future that the aspiration that we have today, is that that happens in an automated fashion as well. So instead of us, at the moment, we do this manually. We have omnichannel managers, they look at this, and they start creating content and applying content at a different time. In the future, the idea is that the content itself is tagged enough so that the machine can serve it as well. Why? So that the customer who's curious, who wants fast answers, gets those answers as and when they want them. And one more thing I'm going to add to what Laura was saying earlier about the 0-point search result. Think about voice and think about the future of voice as well. We used to say, you know, we wanted to rank first on Google and we want to be on the first page and so on and so forth. Voice search doesn't allow anything other than one answer. So it's not even where you're going to be on the first page, it's are you going to be the answer, the one and only answer that the AI is going to give you. The second example I'm going to show you is this. What you're seeing here is a real-life dashboard that represents a real-life event. Because we have access to the data that I just mentioned, we are able, I'm going to go back now and show you once more, we are able to say during the live event, so we have Cisco Live in San Diego right now, and we can watch and see this. How many accounts, which accounts, I'm not showing you here for obvious reasons, but the list of accounts appears as well by name. These accounts currently watch in these places in the world for this amount of time. These are their names. And then the last one, you may not be able to see the last one. There is actually the moment that matter for that account right now. This is what our future looks like. This is what the aspiration is. We don't have a video for it, but we'll, next time I see you, I may share that with you. This is where we're going to stop the presentation element of this and ask for your questions. What are your questions? I'm going to go back and sit, and then we'll take some. I hope you're not a shy group here.
No. And remember what do we call the orange?
What we call the box.
cube?
We have a pretty box that you can throw at each other. It's okay. It's all padded and beautiful. So let's see. We have a question
Yes.
already. That's perfect. Oh, 2 questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and direct all your questions to Deanna
Yeah.
and to June. I'm just a moderator.
I can delegate to.
Go ahead.
Yes. So, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us where you come from? So.
Yeah, hi. This is Akhil Mittal this side. I work with a marketing technology agency called Altudo. Just curious, you showed a lot about B2B and accounts. So what are your key initiatives around account-based marketing?
Oh, okay, beautiful. Let's talk about account-based marketing. So do you? Well, I'm going to tell you my opinion, then you tell me what you think. Is account-based marketing and account-based targeting the same thing? Yeah, we have time. Well, I think it isn't. So very often when a company says we're doing account-based marketing, all they do is really account-based targeting, which basically means we pull a list of accounts and then, maybe we do some IP lookups. So when you land on our site, I can say, hi, I know it's you from your company, right? And I kind of personalize it a little bit there, but the rest of your experience is identical to anyone else. That if that's all you do, I can recognize an account, I can tweak and say, hi, Diana from Cisco. That is equivalent in my mind to me receiving an email that says, hi, Diana, right? wow, we've been doing this for the last 20 years. Account-based account-based marketing for real has to follow through. This is not enough. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with doing account-based targeting either. Just don't lie to yourself. That's not account-based marketing. Account-based marketing means you follow through all the way. So the whole experience is geared toward the account. And then ideally, maybe when this customer actually wants to buy, the sales side is also reacting differently. I'll give you examples. The sales side would say, we have an expert for that industry. Diana is from Cisco. She may be interested in this type of thing. So I'm going to actually give her a different AM to speak to her versus June from Google. June may have different, that's account-based marketing. So in some cases, at the enterprise level, we do it. At the lower level of commercial and small, not yet.
Uh-oh, we're throwing.
Yeah,
All
I think
right.
it's a question for Laura now. Let's see.
Hi, my name is Neeraj Gupta. I'm a Director of Enterprise Architecture for digital
Sorry.
marketing at...
Sorry, you have to, like, pretend like you're eating it.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
So I'm a Director of Enterprise Architecture at Pharmacy Insurance in the digital marketing space. My question, when I saw your presentation, is more on how things are done. So what kind of tools, technologies, platforms do you use in order to achieve your vision?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and we go across the gamut. On Cisco.com, the back end is, using Adobe Experience Manager for CMS, but we use a bunch of tools. Primarily, we use Google on the Search Console side. We use GA as well as we're looking at the data and how people are performing on domain. We do a lot, and Deanna can tell you about the virtual events page where we're thinking about how the Google Cloud Platform then leverages all the data that we can use to deliver the right experience. So we've got a bunch of tools. I think our tech stack has won the Stecky Award 2 years in a row. So there's no endless amount of data that we can't use. It just depends on how we're using that data to deliver the right experience.
What about did you guys use any DMP or CDP in your ecosystem?
Yeah, we do.
It's being built. So again, that's another thing. I don't know how many of you have CDPs built already.
Customer data platform.
Yeah, customer data platform. So no one in the room that I can see, so unless you shout or you're quiet. So same here. So we are in the process of building a CDP. The marketing technology is multi-cloud, right? What Laura just described. We go multi-cloud. We're trying to kind of reduce it actually rather than expand it. But CDP is in the build right now. It's not delivered yet.
So mostly your stack look like you have Adobe on your website and then feeding that data to your big data system and then you're driving analytics.
Yeah, at a high
Yeah,
level. And there are
absolutely, yeah.
many others in the middle that we can talk to probably when the session is over.
Okay,
Awesome. Thank you so much.
thank you.
I think we get the dance and sign that we've got maybe about 5 more minutes left. There you go, 5
Yeah.
more minutes left. We
No,
predicted
we
that.
can still
Yeah,
take
we can take a few
questions,
more
so-
questions for sure.
There you go. You're gonna throw it.
Oh dear. All right. See, that alone was
Excellent
great.
catch.
Hi, my name is Brett Butler. We're a managed service provider, business to business here in LA. And I'm just curious, you mentioned voice search, the customer experience. Kind of two questions. How's that going to change what businesses do with Google search ads? Or, you mentioned when I do a search now, if you show up on the first page versus AI now with voice search will just come up with one answer, right? So maybe I could be many pages deep, but I'm going to get the answer.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious as to how that's going to shape what customers do.
Hey, June, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so 15% of all searches every day are brand new. So we're constantly learning. A lot of that is voice driven and visual driven, also so visual searches. When we think about how brands are reacting to visual, there's a number of ways as well as voice. Without giving everything behind the curtain, it's something I would say more consumer brands are thinking about than B2B at the moment, just because that's where we're seeing the volume of voice coming from. It goes back to the same principles being as relevant to the search as possible. And that's how, all of the rankings and everything that we do is providing that seamless customer experience. I wouldn't weigh it all in voice because obviously the algorithm that goes behind it, desktop, mobile, all the other technologies are still in there as well. So hopefully that answers some of it.
And then I don't know the back end deep enough, but then how does that shape Siri, Alexa, and Google Home as the competitor to, similar to like the Google search engine, everybody goes to that, and shaping the customer experience of getting what they want right the first time through those different methods?
Yeah, so we've seen voice specifically and visual. That is what is helping change those consumers' expectations. And to the point earlier of them being highly curious, demanding, impatient, those are things that are just helping along that process with that consumer expectation. So if you think about the younger generation as well, so people that in that Gen Z, they're using voice and visual at 10 times what other folks are using. So it's become more and more prominent. I think we're still learning what exactly those expectations are going to be. I would say you would lean into the consumer brands that are actively using voice right now to understand their learnings.
I think too with voice search, because the queries are so much longer. When we're typing something in, we're lazy. We just type in what we want. When it's voice search, you can ramble on, and those queries are much longer. And so we take all that data too, and we try to understand intent. This goes back to what we were saying earlier. But then we look at ways that we can make that data portable. So maybe we're using that voice search, on a device like Google Home, so that we're still answering people's questions. It may not be in the search results page, but because they're now using more of those personal assistants, how do we then take that same information and make it relevant for a newer device based on how people are using that information? Good question. So I think we have 2 more minutes left, so we can do one more question. And don't forget, we have our Google Home.
Yeah,
and
remember,
Deanna
if it's hard, you get a present. So
And we've had great questions so far,
Yeah.
so no pressure.
this part of the room.
Okay, we have one.
didn't- Yeah.
Heads up.
All right.
So thank you, and thank you so far for the panel. When you showed the video early, you're actually looking at and talking to attribution. So when they first came in, they came in as anonymous, and
Yep.
then you were somewhat able to follow them. So is Cisco developing, as we look at multi-touch, multi-channel, multi-device attributions, to really start getting the top side of the data? Because as you know, big data, the more you start guessing at it, because you don't know, you end up with a guess at the end. So are there softwares that you guys started using? I don't know if you're familiar with like Telium and Cake, Journey, but even with that, search engines, Lion, more and more searches are private, more and more people are blocking cookies. So what, even on the B2B side, so either what are you guys using or what are you looking at into the future to be able to get, you'd mentioned the number being 12 touches.
Yeah.
That's the ones we can track.
Yeah.
So are there things that Cisco is doing or softwares that you're using to help with that?
We did
Tracking.
for attribution specifically. I'm not going to name it because it's not really about the software that there was any problem. We abandoned it, to be honest. And the future really is the machine learning. That is the only way. We tried actual, very expensive multi-attribution software. It kind of ended up being more work than it was worth doing. And then learned two things. One is in terms of anonymous and known and so on. To be honest, if your answer is not good content that's worth people engaging with, everything else is going to be a problem, right? Until you have that, it's not worth trying to attribute because it's kind of a little bit of, I want to cover my, I want to make sure that I produce results even if I didn't have any. It's not a good game. The game has to be relevance, like June was saying. That's one. And then the second one is we are finding, because of what I was just showing you, attribution would not be able to deliver those either predictions or the visibility. So now we all our kind of eggs are in the machine learning basket for that.
I think we're
I think we
officially
are
out
done.
of time.
So
Yep.
thank you so much. You've
Thank
been
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Whoops.
Again.